Hi, I'm Scott. I'm a Quiet Place fan.
Hi, I'm Senthil, and I'm a Bird Box fan.
So the two of us have decided, since we disagree, we're going to start watching as many horror movies as we can and come up with a new way of rate them. Come join us.
Hey, Scott, good to see you again.
Hey,
What
Senthil.
movie are we talking about today?
Man, it's a doozy. It actually became Iceland's largest grossing film, and it is called Lamb. And it came out in 2020. It did go out to theaters. It's an A21 production. This is a low budget film by the director did a lot of work in film. He was did a lot of electrical work. If you go in and look at it, always behind the scenes. This time he's a first time director, Valdemar Johansson. And I got to tell you something. So right before we started taping this, we started talking about Lamb, and I said, "Hey, we got to start taping because we're getting into some interesting conversation here, especially around is Lamb a horror film, right?" And to me, I was saying I don't feel that it was horror, but it was extremely disturbing.
It was disturbing, and even for me, I don't know. I don't know how to classify this film because there were horrific elements in it. What the mother does to the true natural mother of the lamb, that was horrific. There's blood, there is violence in the movie, not overt, but you see the effects of it.
Right.
There's tension in the movie that grows throughout it, and you clearly see that there's an outsider who sees that something's deeply wrong with the couple. So there are horrific elements to it, but I don't really know that this qualifies as traditional horror either.
Yeah, so I mean, one of the things, again, this is one of those films that uses a very small cast. We've got a cast of three, right? And very little dialogue
Yeah.
throughout this film, Synthel. That was the other thing. What disturbed me so much in this film was the silence. So there's really no music. It's all cinematography. It's suddenly you're in these large, grandiose spaces, and
Yeah.
then you just get squeezed into these into a small home, and they never speak really. I mean, there's no talking. So, I mean, what we're dealing here is this movie is about grief
Yeah.
and dealing with grief and trying to find a miracle in something that is not truly a miracle.
Yeah, this is definitely there are surprising elements to this movie. I didn't know what direction the movie was going to go in. I didn't fully understand why the couple adopted this animal as their child. The grief element was pretty obvious, but the strangeness was, are they mentally unbalanced in some way? But
Right.
then you slowly realize that not all is what it seems to be. The movie's not what it seems to be. The lamb is not what it seems to be. The story didn't go in a direction that I expected. And the last third of the movie completely different. I'll just leave it at that.
Synthel, there are some cinematography moments in this film that just create such a disturbing
Yeah.
feeling. So one of them we've talked about, there is let's call it the lead lamb. There's a moment when this lamb, it's early morning, they're breathing, it's staring directly at the camera. But as you said, the wool around this lamb's throat appears to be opening and closing in a breathing manner. Now, what I rewound that several times just to see, and it just looks like it's great cinematography, right? It just
Yeah.
happened to be just the right thing where the lambs, but it's such a disturbing, it where you're left just kind of sitting there going, what the hell is going on? It made me think a lot of the Vitch, right? With the goat, with the eyes, goat's eyes are turned, their pupils are turned the other way, so they're freaky as hell.
Yeah.
But that goat in that movie gave me the same vibes as the rams in this film did.
Yeah, and that lead ram was the expression that they managed to capture, however they did it. I don't know CGI or if it was some other practical effect, but it was menacing. Clearly, that that ram was unhappy and angry,
Right.
and there was something just off about that. And that's when you start to realize that there's more to the movie. And I really thought this was some sort of going to end up being a devil worship kind of a movie. It's not.
Yes.
And that's what I fully expected, because that was not a normal ram. That's for certain.
Right. And we're trying not to give away. If you haven't
Yeah.
seen the movie, we're being a little vague because there's a pivotal moment in the crib that is truly a pivotal moment that you just go, holy crap. So if you haven't seen this film, we're trying not to give away that moment. Yeah.
Yeah, it's so different, and the story is unexpected, and the typical elevator pitch description that goes along with this movie doesn't prepare you for what you're about to
No.
face. And you may not be compelled to watch it, but I would say it's definitely worth watching, because it's a different kind of story, and I don't think anything like I've seen before.
I've
So
never
it's a
seen
unique
anything
twist.
like this. The closest I've seen is Netflix with the human, I can't remember the name of the film that the guy's the deer, the
Oh
character
yeah,
deer.
I'll have to edit this out, but I cannot remember the name of the movie. Candy, Sweet Tooth,
Sweet Tooth.
Right?
There you go. It's kind of got a Sweet Tooth feel to it, but it's way, way, way more disturbing than that. And Synthel, actually, I just want to bring up a couple of scenes a couple of things in this film that truly made it disturbing for me. The interaction between mother and mother. So the true mother and the adoptive mother, I think is just absolutely. I walked away from this film very disturbed by
Yeah.
this relationship, right, of what took place.
Yeah.
And how they got the true mother to act the way it did. Again, cinematographers, animal trainers, just amazing. The other one that disturbed me was when the uncle comes in,
Yeah.
takes the child by the hand and is holding a shotgun and walks it through a field of flowers.
Yeah.
Because he's going to kill the child.
Yeah.
But he doesn't, right? So I'm giving away a little bit there, and I apologize, but it's important to know, because you have to watch this and understand that the way this is filmed, the way that they get you to feel these feelings, it was insane.
I'd love to, maybe have a deeper discussion on a future one, because I felt the same way about both of those scenes. The interaction between the two mothers, I could empathize with both of them.
Yes.
I felt for both of them. I don't know how much of that was the director's skill and how much of that was just me projecting, what I saw as innocence to the characters. And I could empathize with the lamb that the uncle wanted to shoot.
Yes.
And I could feel what the uncle felt that led him to ultimately decide not to shoot the kid. And I don't know how much of that is me projecting what clearly was a warm, fuzzy, friendly-looking lamb, and my attitude towards animals versus the director's skill to somehow portray the innocence that you felt sorry for.
I think it's the director's skill, Cynthia, because there was multiple moments in this film that elicited a feeling of compassion, fear, or absolute stomach churning, just like, I think it was, and the ending wasn't anything that I would have expected. I mean, it was just one of those bizarre endings, and truly the ending gets even more bizarre, right? Because what is it at the end of the film? You're like, what just happened?
What just happened? And the whole good versus evil, it's not black and white in this movie. You really feel for the true mother. It's heartbreaking in some of those scenes with the true mother that keep occurring. At the same time, you also empathize with two parents that are clearly deeply hurting from a loss. And then the direction it goes in, there are a lot of, it's one of those movies where you end up with more questions than answers. It's clearly intentional that way, vague. This needs a sequel. I don't say that often, but some background story prequel, fill in the blanks. I would love to see more from this director.
So, Cynthia, I got to ask one more question before we go, and that is the relationship between the brother and the wife. And the question I have for you is, was there potentially an affair earlier on that he continues to try to, because it felt that way to me, which was kind of this leading role into what was happening throughout this film, right? The despair, the anguish, all of that. And this was just that cherry on the top, right? And it just felt like there was something there.
Yeah, there was, the two actors did a good job of portraying familiarity. There was familiarity there beyond just, you know, sister-in-law and brother. Clearly there was more there. That was the perception I had. But the question I'd have for you in that is, especially the direction that the arc for the uncle ended up, how did that fit into the puzzle? What was the point of the whole uncle storyline of the movie to you?
You see, and to me, that's why I'm trying to figure it out whether or not there was an affair earlier on, right? Because it's that a loss of a child, the affair takes place, right? So, you know, and I might be giving away a little bit here, but, you know, a loss of a child, the affair takes place, they realize it's wrong, they end that. So you've got this double, you know, grief on her part, right? So she's wanting to be a mother, she's wanting to be a spouse again. Then he comes back in, right? So now we've introduced a new child. He comes back in again and tries to start the relationship back up again, right? So it's a constant repeating cycle to me, is what I looked at. Is it kind of felt like to me, you can't easily just dispose of grief. Grief is not something you just can walk away from. It's something that is bound to you. And so this child and this relationship she obviously had with the brother was this continuation of grief that she couldn't get rid of. And it's almost symbolic to me at the end that what she does with the brother-in-law, right? At the end. You know, it's trying to move on. And I think that was the thing at the end for me that took me over the edge a little bit, Cynthia, was to realize that she would never be allowed to move on, right? Because then all this tragedy happens and she's left again, right?
It's
a cycle.
It definitely, I thought the role for the uncle for me was, it allows you to see if this is just some sort of hallucinogenic psychosis that that what you're seeing is real, that you're not just looking through the eyes of these two, and it's, you know, and that they're not fantasizing about what's really going on. So you see what's actually going on from the uncle's perspective, and then it's also an opportunity for her to, I think, step out of the choices that she's made, and she doesn't. She chooses not to step outside of the world that she's picked to live in.
That's a good point.
And she sends away the outside world, and there are consequences for that. So there's a great job the director does of leading us to ask all these questions, and not spoon feeding the audience, which makes it a little bit more mysterious, and the ending, which I completely don't understand, and didn't expect. So, guys, this is one of the movies where you want to talk to the director and say, well, what was your mindset? And learn more. So I loved it. I would highly recommend it. It is not something that you would probably pick up on just by looking at the movie description.
Nope. I think this is one of those films I would tell anybody, you got to watch it just for the cinematography alone, and the beautiful way that this was filmed, and a phenomenal portrayal of grief. I just thought it was so well done.
My final thoughts on this is a couple. One is similar to what we're talking about in the previous movie. I would love to see some sort of an avenue for these non-standard pseudo horror, small budget, micro budget movies. Some of them are hard to find. They have a lot of talent and heart and soul put behind them by the cast and the crew, and it's hard to discover what these are. I mean, we've been through this. As we're looking for micro budget, small budget movies, it's difficult to locate budget information isn't always available. And then identifying ones that have value in terms of viewability. There needs to be a better visibility for these types of movies.
I agree. Synthel, as always, man, I love these talks. I can't wait for our next one. I'll see you next time.
Looking forward to it. I'll see you next time.